وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ.
Men of understanding, there is life for you in retribution, that you may guard yourselves against violating the law. Men of understanding, there is life for you in retribution. This refutes another notion of ignorance, a notion ingrained in the minds of many people, both past and present. On the one hand, there are some people who, entrenched in ignorance, tend to exceed the limits of moderation in revenge. At the other end of the spectrum stand those who are opposed in principle to the concept of executing a murderer. They have conducted such intense worldwide propaganda against the death penalty that it has become abhorrent to many people. In fact, the impact of this propaganda has been so great that in many countries the death penalty has been abolished altogether. The Quran, however, addresses itself on this question to wise and intelligent people and cautions them against such immoderate leniency by proclaiming that the survival of human society rests on the application of the death penalty for homicide. A society which holds inviolable the lives of those who disregard the sanctity of human life is in fact rearing snakes and serpents. To save the life of one murderer is to risk the lives of many innocent human beings.
كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت إن ترك خيرا الوصية للوالدين والأقربين بالمعروف حقا على المتقين.
It is decreed that when death approaches, those of you who leave behind property shall bequeath equitably to parents and kinsmen. This is an obligation on the God-fearing.
This is an obligation on the God-fearing. This injunction relates to a period of time when no rules had been laid down for the distribution of inheritance. Thus, everyone was required to make testamentary disposal of their property, so as to ensure that no disputes arose in the family and no legitimate claimant to inheritance was deprived of his due share. Later, when God revealed a set of laws regarding the distribution of inheritance, see Quran 4:11, the Prophet elucidated further the laws relating to testamentary disposition and inheritance by expounding two rules. First, that no person can make any will regarding his estate in favor of any of his legal heirs. Their portions were laid down in the Quran, and neither increase nor decrease in this was permissible, nor could any heir be disinherited, nor anything willed in favor of any heir over and above his legal portion. Second, that testamentary disposition might be made to the extent of 1/3 of the estate, but no more. The purpose underlying these explanatory directives of the Prophet seems to be that at least 2/3 of the estate should be left aside to be distributed among the legal heirs according to the Quranic rules, and that a will could be made in respect of the whole or part of the remaining 1/3. This could be made in favor of either relatives, whether close or distant, who are not legal heirs, or others not related by the blood tie, but who are deserving of assistance. Likewise, a will could be made in favor of charitable causes which are found worthy of support. In later times, people began to regard this directive regarding testamentary disposal as a recommendation only. The result was that this rule fell largely into disuse. It is significant, however, that the Quran mentions it as an obligation on the God-fearing. Were Muslims to make this injunction on operative institution, no trace would remain of the problems which agitate their minds respecting the Islamic law of inheritance. For example, grandchildren whose parents had predeceased their paternal or maternal grandparents and who under Islamic law were not entitled to inherit from their grandparents.
The author suggests that reactivating the Quranic directive on testamentary disposal is the answer to this and similar problems.
فَمَن بَدَّلَهُ بَعْدَمَا سَمِعَهُ فَإِنَّمَا إِثْمُهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يُبَدِّلُونَهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ.
Then, if anyone alters the will after hearing it, this sin shall be upon them who alter. Surely, Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing.
فمن خاف من موص جنفا أو إثما فأصلح بينهم فلا إثم عليه إن الله غفور رحيم.
He who suspects that the testator has committed an error or injustice, and then brings about a settlement among the parties concerned, incurs no sin. Surely, Allah is much forgiving, most compassionate.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون.
Believers, fasting is enjoined upon you, as it was enjoined upon those before you, that you become God-fearing.
As it was enjoined upon those before you, that you become God-fearing. Like most other injunctions of Islam, those relating to fasting were revealed gradually. In the beginning, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had instructed the Muslims to fast 3 days in every month, though this was not obligatory. When the injunction in the present verse was later revealed in 2 after Hijri, a degree of relaxation was introduced. It was stipulated that those who did not fast despite their capacity to endure it were obliged to feed one poor person as an expiation for each day of obligatory fasting missed. Another injunction was revealed later, and here the relaxation in respect of able-bodied persons was revoked. However, for the sick, the traveler, the pregnant, the breastfeeding women, and the aged who could not endure fasting, the relaxation was retained.
أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
Fasting is for a fixed number of days, and if one of you be sick, or if one of you be on a journey, you will fast the same number of other days later on. For those who are capable of fasting, but still do not fast, there is a redemption, feeding a needy man for each day missed. Whoever voluntarily does more good than is required will find it better for him, and that you should fast is better for you, if you only know.
Whoever voluntarily does more good than is required will find it is better for him. This act of extra merit could either be feeding more than one person required, or both fasting and feeding the poor. And that you should fast is better for you if you only know. Here ends the early injunction with regard to fasting, which was revealed in 2 after Hijri, prior to the Battle of Badr. The verses that follow were revealed about 1 year later and are linked with the preceding verses, since they deal with the same subject.
شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون.
During the month of Ramadan, the Quran was sent down as a guidance to the people with clear signs of true guidance and as the criterion between right and wrong. So those of you who live to see that month should fast it, and whoever is sick or on a journey should fast the same number of other days instead. Allah wants ease and not hardship for you, so that you may complete the number of days required. Magnify Allah for what He has guided you to, and give thanks to Him.
So that you may complete the number of days required. Whether a person should or should not fast while on a journey is left to individual discretion. We find that among the companions who accompanied the Prophet on journeys, some fasted, whereas others did not. None objected to the conduct of another. The Prophet himself did not always fast when traveling. On one journey, a person was so overwhelmed by hunger that he collapsed. The Prophet disapproved when he learned that the man had been fasting. During wars, the Prophet used to prevent people from fasting so that they would not lack energy for the fight. It has been reported by Umar that 2 military expeditions took place in the month of Ramadan. The first was the Battle of Badr, and the second, the conquest of Mecca. On both occasions, the companions abstained from fasting, and according to Ibn Umar, on the occasion of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet proclaimed that people should not fast since it was a day of fighting. In other traditions, the Prophet is reported to have said that people should not fast when they had drawn close to the enemy, since abstention from fasting would lead to greater strength. The duration of a journey for which it becomes permissible for a person to abstain from fasting is not absolutely clear from any statement of the Prophet. In addition, the practice of the companions was not uniform. It would seem that any journey which is commonly regarded as such and which is attended by the circumstances generally associated with traveling should be deemed sufficient justification for not fasting. Jurists agree that one does not have to fast on the day of commencing a journey. One may eat either at the point of departure or after the actual journey has commenced. Either course is sanctioned by the practice of the companions. Jurists, however, are not agreed as to whether or not the residents of a city under attack may abstain from fasting, even though they are not actually traveling. Ibn Taymiyyah favors the permissibility of abstention from fasting and supports his view with very forceful arguments. Magnify Allah for what He has guided you to, and give thanks to Him. This indicates that fasting need not be confined exclusively to Ramadan. For those who fail to fast during that month owing to some legitimate reason, God has kept the door of compensation open during other months of the year so that they need not be deprived of the opportunity to express their gratitude to Him for His great bounty in revealing the Quran. It should be noted here that fasting in Ramadan has not only been declared an act of worship and devotion and a means to nourish piety, but it has also been characterized as an act of gratefulness to God for His great bounty of true guidance in the form of the Quran. In fact, the best way of expressing gratitude for someone's bounty or benevolence is to prepare oneself to the best of one's ability to achieve the purpose for which that bounty has been bestowed. The Quran has been revealed so that we may know the way that leads to God's good pleasure, follow that way ourselves, and direct the world along it. Fasting is an excellent means by which to prepare ourselves for shouldering this task. Hence, fasting during the month of the revelation of the Quran is more than an act of worship and more than an excellent course of moral training. It is also an appropriate form for the expression of our thankfulness to God for the bounty of the Quran.
وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ.
O Muhammad, peace be upon him, when my servants ask you about me, tell them I indeed am quite near. I hear and answer the call of the caller whenever he calls me. Let them listen to my call and believe in me. Perhaps they will then be guided aright. Let them listen to my call and believe in me. Even though people can neither see God nor subject Him to any other form of sense perception, this should not make them feel that God is remote from them. On the contrary, He is so close to each and every person that whenever any person so wishes, he can communicate with his Lord.
so much so that God hears and responds even to the prayers which remain within the innermost recesses of the heart. People exhaust themselves by approaching false and powerless beings whom they foolishly fancy to be their deities, but who have neither the power to hear nor to grant their prayers. But God, the omnipotent Lord and the absolute Master of this vast universe, who wields all power and authority, is so close to human beings that they can always approach Him without the intercession of any intermediaries, and can put to Him their prayers and requests. Perhaps they will then be guided aright. This announcement of God's closeness to man may open his eyes to the truth, may turn him to the right way, wherein lies his success and well-being.
أحل لكم ليلة الصيام الرفث إلى نسائكم هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن علم الله أنكم كنتم تختانون أنفسكم فتاب عليكم وعفى عنكم فالآن باشروهن وابتغوا ما كتب الله لكم وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل ولا تباشروهن وأنتم عاكفون في المساجد تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس لعلهم يتقون.
It has been made lawful to go in to your wives during the night of the fast. They are your garment, and you are theirs. Allah knows you betrayed yourselves, and He mercifully relented and pardoned you. So you may now associate intimately with your wives and benefit from the enjoyment Allah has made lawful for you. And eat and drink at night until you can discern the white streak of dawn against the blackness of the night. Then give up all that and complete your fasting until night sets in. But do not associate intimately with your wives during the period when you are on retreat in the mosques. These are the bounds set by Allah. Do not then even draw near them. Thus does Allah make His signs clear to mankind, that they may stay away from evil.
They are your garment, and you are theirs. Just as nothing intervenes between a person's body and his clothes, so nothing can intervene between a man and his wife. It is a relationship of inalienable intimacy. So you may now associate intimately with your wives and benefit from the enjoyment Allah has made lawful for you. Although there was no categorical ordinance in the early days prohibiting sexual intercourse between husband and wife during the nights of Ramadan, people generally assumed that this was not permissible. Despite the feeling that their action was either not permitted or was at least disapproved of, they did at times approach their wives. Such a betrayal of conscience can encourage a sinful disposition. God therefore first reproaches them with their lack of integrity, for this is what was objectionable. As for the act itself, God makes it clear that it is quite permissible. Henceforth they might engage in sexual intercourse as a perfectly lawful act, unencumbered by feelings of guilt. And eat and drink at night. In this connection too, there was a misapprehension at first. Some thought that eating and drinking were absolutely prohibited after the performance of the Isha night prayers. Others thought that one could eat and drink so long as one had not fallen asleep, but that if one had, it was not permissible to eat on reawakening. These were people's own fancies, and often caused great inconvenience. This verse seeks to remove all such misconceptions. It clearly lays down the duration of the fast. From dawn until sunset. Between sunset and dawn, it is permissible to eat, to drink, and to indulge in the legitimate gratification of sexual desires. At the same time, the Prophet introduced the pre-fasting repast, recommending a good meal just before dawn. until you can discern the white streak of dawn against the blackness of the night. In fixing the time of obligatory rites, Islam has been mindful that these timings should be so clear and simple that people at all stages of development should be able to follow them. This is why Islam bases its timing on conspicuous natural phenomena and not on the clock. Some people object that this principle of timing is untenable in areas close to the poles, where night and day each last for about 6 months. This objection is based on a very superficial knowledge of geography. In point of fact, neither day nor night lasts for 6 months in those areas, not in the sense in which people living near the equator conceive of night and day. The signs of morning and evening appear at the poles with unfailing regularity, and it is on this basis that people time their sleeping and waking, their professional work, their play and recreation. Even in the days before watches were common, the people of countries like Finland, Norway, and Greenland used to fix the hours of the day and night by means of various signs that appeared on the horizon. Just as those signs helped them to determine their schedules in other matters, so they should enable them to time their various prayers, the pre-fast meal, and the breaking of the fast. Then, give up all that, and complete your fasting until night sets in. Complete your fasting until night sets in means that the time of fasting ends with nightfall. For instance, sunset marks the breaking of the fast. The precise time of the end of the pre-dawn repast is when a lean strip of aurora appears at the eastern end of the horizon and begins to grow. The time to break one's fast starts when the darkness of night seems to have begun to appear over the eastern horizon. In our own time, some people have adopted an attitude of extreme caution with regard to the time of both the end and start of fasting. The law has not fixed these schedules with rigid precision. If a person wakes up just at the crack of dawn, it is proper for him to eat and drink hastily. According to a tradition, the Prophet said, "If any one of you hears the call for the morning prayer while he is eating, he should not stop immediately, but should finish eating to the extent of his bare need." Similarly, one need not wait for the light of day to disappear fully before breaking the fast. The Prophet, for instance, used to ask Bilal to bring him something to drink as soon as the sun had set. Bilal expressed his astonishment, pointing out that the light of day could still be observed. To this the Prophet replied that the time of fasting came to an end when the darkness of night began to rise from the east. But do not associate intimately with your wives during the period when you are on retreat in the mosques. On retreat in the mosque refers to the religious practice of spending the last 10 days of Ramadan in the mosque, consecrating this time to the remembrance of God. In this state, known as itikaf, one may go out of the mosque only for the absolutely necessary requirements of life, but one must stay away from gratifying one's sexual desire. Do not, then, even draw near them. The directive here is neither to exceed nor draw near the limits set by God. This means that it is dangerous for a man to skirt the boundaries of disobedience. Prudence demands that one should keep some distance from these lest one's steps inadvertently lead one to cross them. The same principle has been enunciated in a tradition in which the Prophet said, "Every sovereign has an enclosed pasture, and the enclosed pasture of God consists of his prohibitions. So whosoever keeps grazing around that pasture is likely to fall into it." It is a pity that many people who are not conversant with the spirit of the Sharia, Islamic law, insist on using these boundaries to the limits. Many religious scholars exert themselves in finding out arguments to justify this attitude, and a point is thus reached where only a hair's breadth separates obedience from disobedience. Consequently, many people fall prey to disobedience, even to downright error and wrongdoing. For once a man arrives at this point, he is seldom capable of discerning between right and wrong, and maintaining the absolute self-control needed to keep within the lawful limits.